Frank Herbert's Dune has withstood the test of time, not only because it's a foundational classic of the sci-fi genre and enraptures readers with its imagination, but because it challenges thought and asks profound questions on the nature of the individual, on social systems, and the limits of power. But Dune is dense, an epic that spans thousands of pages and details millennia of human history, makes it difficult to peel away layers of complexity and extract the essential messages held within. This is a video on the philosophy of Dune and its themes. Definitely a different type of video than usual for the channel, but one I'm excited to dig into. We'll discuss what I think are 6 moral or philosophical assertions implied by Herbert's work and one underlying imperative that connects most, if not all of them. A disclaimer: even though primary sources and secondary analysis are used, some topics are my own interpretation and will conflict with yours. That's the beauty of literature and what makes Dune compelling. After watching, please let me know your own takeaways in the comments. Alright, let's dive in. Perhaps the greatest assertion across the Dune series is to beware the hero, and this is given to us directly through interview in which Herbert states, "Beware of heroes. Much better to rely on your own judgment and your own mistakes." The cult of the leader is a socio-political weapon utilized by tyrants and oligarchs to create an idealized image of the heroic leader. Through propaganda, patriotism, and spectacle, they conjure images of a glorious savior against whom resistance isn't dreamed. In this method, they control the masses. Indoctrination paves the way to blind obedience and devotion towards the hero. Hero worship brings with it exploitable weaknesses, a sentiment echoed in this quote: "No more terrible disaster could befall your people than for them to fall into the hands of a hero." The narrative in Dune, especially the first 3 novels, tackles the terrible difficulties that arise when the hero is given absolute power. This comes first in the form of Paul Atreides, a Kwisatz Haderach, a person bred by the Bene Gesserit to possess superhuman abilities with an irresistible charisma. But in Paul, Herbert creates a man with faults, vices, emotional turmoil, things a hero should be without. Humans are corruptible, and once they are thrust upon pedestals and deified, they use their platform for devastation. As Herbert himself says, there's definitely an implicit warning in a lot of my work against charismatic leaders. After all, such people, well-intentioned or not, are human beings who will make human mistakes. And what happens when someone is able to make mistakes for 200 million people? This is precisely what we see with Muad'Dib's jihad, which sterilizes dozens of planets and kills 90 billion. None of which could have transpired without Fremen religious fanaticism, but more so without the anticipatory obedience of the Empire after power is transferred to Paul. In his book On Tyranny, author Timothy Snyder states that people are surprisingly willing to harm and kill others in the service of a new purpose, if they are so instructed by a new authority. The early reign of Paul Atreides is a clear example of this. If we transfer our accountability over to another, if we subscribe to the cult of the leader, we are swept away by evil. Dune's hero worship is inextricably linked to religion. Central to many religious beliefs is a messiah. They are infallible, chosen by higher powers to change and lift their followers to an imagined salvation. Such a religion exists amongst the Fremen tribes of Arrakis, but those with knowledge are aware that it's at its core a lie propagated by the Bene Gesserit. Through the Missionaria Protectiva, they plant messianic prophecies over centuries. They use religion as a weapon. The Sisterhood propagates the prophecy of the Lisan al-Gaib, the Mahdi, the voice from the outer world who will come to liberate the Fremen and create a green paradise. The Atreides exploit the Fremen. Through Paul's preternatural ability and his mother Lady Jessica's schemes, they turn the Fremen prophecies into shackles that bind them. This transition from friend to follower is highlighted in the character of Stilgar, a Fremen naib of Sietch Tabra. Like with any foreigner, Stilgar is initially suspicious of Paul Atreides, though he respects the young man's potential. But the Fremen prophecy implanted by the Bene Gesserit wears on Stilgar's mind, and over time, Paul appears increasingly like the Messiah. Soon, the Naib transforms into Muad'Dib's most fervent zealot. The religious awe deeply ingrained becomes a lever by which he is controlled, and Stilgar loses his unique autonomy. Tragedy and religion are further manipulated by Paul's son, the God Emperor Leto II, who uses myth and the cult of the hero to dominate both body and mind of the known universe for over 3,000 years. All opposition and contrary thought is inundated by religious ecstasy. The concept of power is a pillar of Herbert's commentary. Its accumulation, its maintenance, its dissolution, and its many masks are explored. The axiom goes that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's a notion expanded in the novels and exemplified in this quote. All governments suffer a recurring problem. Power attracts pathologic personalities. It's not that power corrupts, but that it is magnetic to the corruptible. We see this in Baron Vladimir, the tyrant of House Harkonnen, whose treachery knows no limitation. He spies, assassinates, bribes, tortures, and extorts to not just maintain his position, but to grasp at the imperial throne. Juxtaposed to his rival, the loyal and righteous Duke Leto of House Atreides, and the Baron's evil is amplified. And it's the desire to maintain his own power that drives the Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV Corrino to conspire with House Harkonnen over the Atreides' destruction. Leto's influence within the Landsraad Council grew to threaten Shaddam's position. He represented a charismatic leader to whom many may flock. The Duke and Emperor once shared a strong friendship, but it can't contend with power's significance in Shaddam's mind, and though he mourns Leto's death, he does nothing to prevent it. My favorite glimpse into power's danger comes in the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood, a faction that works in shadow to bring about its desires. Sisters infiltrate and pressure all levels of the Imperium. Through indirect means, they hold the reins of the Empire, ruling in all but name. Even this distance, however, doesn't spare the Sisterhood from corruption. It works over them slowly. It transforms their genetic breeding program, their vision of a Kwisatz Haderach, from a potentially just and all-powerful leader intent to save humanity to an enfeebled puppet. They bend all their designs to placing their Kwisatz Haderach on the Lion Throne, an emperor subservient to the Bene Gesserit. Blinded as such, they can't see how power has changed them. And in later novels such as Heretics of Dune and Dune Chapter House, so great is the rot within their own system that the Bene Gesserit order can hardly resist their own corruption. A quote from Herbert goes, "People say that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. My point is that power attracts the corruptible." Dependence is a terrible master. Rely on only one source of wealth, one source of happiness, of information, of anything, and shortly you will come to be ruled by it. Spice in Dune is the quintessence of power. It's both the most prized commodity and the scarcest resource. But the geriatric drug represents the dangers of dependence. The known universe relies on this single substance. Without it, humanity would be unable to safely navigate space lanes. Each star system would crumble in isolation. The Spacing Guild and the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood are critically dependent on spice. Without it, their orders would dissolve. Billions would die too from the toxic withdrawal that follows spice deprivation. It's humanity's greatest asset and disastrous liability. The Dune Saga warns against such single-tracked weakness. Paul Atreides and his son Leto both leverage the invaluable spice against the Imperium to dominate it. It becomes an obsession of the Bene Tleilax to manufacture synthetic spice to destroy the Arrakis monopoly and ease the crucial necessity. And we don't only see this danger in the spice melange. The scarcity of water on Arrakis increases the Fremen's dependence on what little they can find. Their entire culture is dominated by this resource. They preserve to the extreme. It plays a vital role in religion and society, and it's the shared hope of a future replete with water that the Fremen are imprisoned. The imperial planetologist Pardo Kynes, his son Liet Kynes, and Paul Muad'Dib all channel the Fremen's desire for a blue planet to manipulate their hearts and bend their minds. And the ancient days of the Old Empire are a cautionary tale of reliance on artificial intelligence. Advancements in technology created a reality in which thinking machines took over ever greater aspects of society, while humanity itself grew lethargic. Mankind's increasing dependence on AI made them vulnerable to the few who held power. And the expanded Dune prequels of Herbert's son Brian and Kevin Anderson further illustrate the technological slavery that came about after thinking machines conquered the Old Empire. Such dependence destroys humanity. And over-reliance on one entity naturally lends itself to great weakness, stagnation, and decay, which leads to the next thematic element. Adversity. Challenge strengthens both the individual and society against threats to its well-being. Just as heavy loads build muscle, so too does difficulty mold resilience. Without struggle, we grow complacent and weak. Locally, this is best exemplified by the Fremen tribes. The planet represents adversity to the extreme. All human activity focuses on simple survival. Where water is absent, the sun's rays can kill, and sandworms devour hundreds. But this crucible shapes the Fremen into the most lethal warriors in the known universe, better even than House Carino's infamous Sardaukar. Arrakis is a better training ground than any military camp. Its inhospitable environment breeds a people that conquered the Imperium during Paul Muad'Dib's religious jihad. As the Naib Stilgar states, a Fremen dies when he is too long from the desert. This we call the water sickness. They lose their edge when not constantly surrounded by adversity. On a grand scale, difficulty appears first in the Scattering and then in Kralazek, the Typhoon struggle at the end of the universe, and humanity's ultimate fight for survival in the Golden Path. The end of God Emperor Leto II's reign precipitates a period of terrible struggle known as the Famine Times, where humanity is pushed to an existential brink. Out of this, they explode in an unparalleled age of hope and colonization, known as the Scattering, which promises humankind's continued survival. But again, adversity rears its head in Kralazek. The Lost Ones return to upend society. They destroy or conquer much of the Empire, and behind them the outside enemy threatens to obliterate all. It's in this terrible Typhoon struggle that mankind is strengthened and they emerge able to withstand all future difficulties. If challenge ensures survival, its opposite ensures death. Like two halves of a coin, the inverse of adversity is decadence. Herbert posits that great leisure leads to stagnation and inevitable decline as lethargy infects body and spirit. Ill-equipped to overcome the challenges thrust upon them, a society collapses as governments bloat with bureaucrats and leaders fall to the vices of ease. As mentioned in Heretics of Dune, bureaucracy destroys initiative. There's little that bureaucrats hate more than innovation, especially innovation that produces better results than the old routines. Improvements always make those at the top of the heap look inept. Who enjoys appearing inept? What's left is a society that prohibits progressive or wayward thought. Those things that can't think or evaluate can't change, and those things that can't change wither. Dune illustrates this inevitability with three great examples. The first is in the opulence and destruction of the Old Empire brought about by thinking machines. Oligarchs gathered more influence, swelled their coffers with AI tech. So blinded by their greed they couldn't recognize the threat that loomed until it consumed them. Next, we're witness to an empire that has survived under House Carino for 10,000 years. It's one that has stagnated. Duplicity rules in the Landsrat League. The Emperor cares only for the pleasure world of Katan. His renowned Sardaukar legions have grown soft. The interstellar feudalistic model creates a stratified society unkind to mixing. It's a decayed government on the verge of collapse. Paul Atreides feels the collective unconscious of the species in many of his prescient visions. They desire a great upheaval, bloodshed, adventure, chaos to shake them from the stupor they have been in for thousands of years. He wields this desire to overthrow House Carino. And then, in the far future, the Lost Ones who return from the scattering represent new enemies and threaten to destroy the factions that rule the old empire. The Lost Ones put great pressure, they force change, and those unable to adapt to new circumstances are overcome. No Dune analysis would be complete without discussion of technologies, and most relevant to our current age is Herbert's commentary on the potential dangers of artificial intelligence. Though not a major plot point in Dune's narrative, humanity's ancient struggle against thinking machines and the Butlerian Jihad act as foundation for the Empire's society. Many see in Dune a warning against reliance on AI and its insidious nature. Thinking machines shouldn't themselves be the cause of worry, but rather the intentions of those who control them. This is captured beautifully by a quote from Dune. Once, men turned their thinking over to machines in the hope that this would set them free, but that only permitted other men with machines to enslave them. If we turn to our own world, for example, we see how much technology has liberated us from menial tasks, from boredom, short lives, and hard labor. It's a wonderful boon to be sure, but I think one that's double-edged. With the prevalence of social media and introduction of AI, a select few can spread mis- or disinformation, can leak or obscure evidence, profess lies as truth, which alters our perception and even our internal reality. In short order, a small group can control what we see, hear, and think, resulting in a type of dominance parallel to that in Dune. Conversely, in the aftermath of technological scouring, we have a society that has regressed in many ways, but also one that demonstrates the limitless capacity of human potential. People were required to fill the void left by AI, so we see the development of superhuman skills. Mentats calculate with computer-like accuracy. Guild navigators are able to peer into the future. The Bene Gesserit can experience the past. In this sense, technology represents a weight that prevents us from unlocking our greatest mental and physical potential. This too is easily translated into our own world. We live in an age of distraction in which phones, screens, and superficial leisure fight to keep an ever-dwindling attention span. As we numb ourselves with increased consumption, we're unable to create, to dream, and imagine. We fall to mediocrity as our potential goes unrealized. Written 60 years ago in Herbert's Dune is poignant today. Many influential thinkers throughout history are accredited with quotes that can be distilled to this: believe nothing, question everything. And for me, this is the greatest call to action of the series, to think for oneself. Only by exercising our freedom of thought and of expression can we maintain agency in our lives and fulfill our moral purpose. If we relinquish our thinking to an outside force, to a hero or government, we invite the gross abuse of power and allow corruption to fester. We must be wary of those whose charisma and audacity stirs the masses, but who lack true substance. We can't allow ourselves to be carried on the waves of what Herbert describes as the race consciousness, to join the bandwagon and do things merely because that's what everyone else is doing. We see examples of how handing your thinking over to another ends disastrously. It's an easy and seductive thing to surrender critical thinking. It absolves us of responsibility. It saves us from tough decisions and living with their often painful consequences. But it's precisely how institutions exploit and enslave. Without resistance, evil reigns. But if we retain our agency, if we think critically and determine for ourselves what is right and wrong, we can oppose those who would manipulate us. The American abolitionist of the 19th century, Wendell Phillips, is attributed with this line: eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. Power is ever stealing from the many to the few. And though it's an observation of our world, its parallels are found throughout the Dune series. We are blessed with freedom of thought, It's our duty not to offer it blindly. Thanks so much for watching and listening. This was a different kind of video for the channel, and I'm interested to know your thoughts. Which themes and assertions do you find most compelling? Put your own insights and suggestions for future videos in the comments below. And if you're a fan of lore and storytelling, be sure to subscribe to the channel, check out the podcast where content is uploaded frequently. I want to thank my amazing supporters over on Patreon who make all of this possible, and I couldn't do it without their fantastic support. If you'd like to become a lore luminary for access to me, a great community, written scripts, and early video drops, head to patreon.com/thelorebrarians to learn more. Until next time, go forth and explore the lore.